Hey guys, welcome back to the Novel Universe with your hostesses Ashley and Dawn. And today we are going to be talking about All My Rage by the one and the only Miss Sabaa Tahir, which, if you guys have never heard of Sabaa Tahir, she has a whole other fantasy trilogy called Ember and the Ashes that is out. Is it a quadruple? Sorry, there's four books. What would you call that?
A
A
quad.
quadruplet?
A
A quad?
quad.
A quad? it's four books in her series. I totally forgot about the last one that we just read. But this is her first realistic fiction book. It's contemporary. It's really totally left field than what we know of Sabaa herself, because this is a very different writing. So today we are going to talk about that. And we wanted to just say, if you do not follow us already, that you can find us on Instagram, and we sometimes post to YouTube. You will find us at the Novel Universe Pod. Okay. So go ahead and subscribe to us so you can get those notifications when we're posting, which is usually twice a month. We do 2 books a month. Sometimes we get advantageous and we do 3. But it's mostly 2. So yeah, without further ado, we are going to talk about All My Rage. We're going to split it up into 2 sections. So the first section is going to be non-spoilers. We will do our best to keep this very vague. And then in the second section, we will let you know when you need to hop out, or if you want to stay and hear us spoil everything, you can stay on it. But don't worry, we will let you know when that happens in the show notes as well. So without further ado, All My Rage, Sabaa Tahir. So within All My Rage, we are greeted with the past and present of a lot of our characters. This story is super unforgettable, heart-wrenching contemporary novel about family forgiveness, love, and loss. And so within this novel, we experience Mishpa. I think that's how you say her name, Mishpa, who is the owner of the Cloud Rest Inn with her husband, Torfik, and they are from Pakistan. And we are also greeted with our characters Sal and Noor, and we learn about the differences in what coming to America looks like and the struggles that we can face wanting to fit into our society today. That's how I'm going to leave it, because seriously, I don't want to spoil it. Like, it's too there's so much happening that I feel like if you read the description of the book, you might spoil some things for yourself in a little bit. And I will say there are some trigger warnings in this book. There is sexual abuse, and there is drug abuse. There's racial issues as well. So just be forewarned before you read. This is not a light and fluffy book. Not a light and fluffy book. This is YA, but honestly, this is probably one for everybody. There is so much going on, and it's such a great discussion book. And Dawn and I cannot wait to talk about it. So, Dawn, what did you rate this book?
All right, so I gave it a 4.25. I would love to have given it. What? You kill me with your facial expressions. I don't know
we
what.
We can still be friends. We can still be friends, because I had literally was telling Justin today, my husband, I was like, if she poo-poos on this book, our friendship it's done. It is done. We're done.
I hated House of Sky and Breath. I hated that book. And I poo-pooed all over.
This is why I said that. This is why I was like, oh my gosh, oh no. Okay, so going to
I wanted to give it a little bit higher. I wish it had been a little bit more critical than it was, but I think if I'm giving it a rating specifically for a teenager, I would give it a 4.5. But as far as like critical, 4.25. I know that sounds ridiculous, but
you're a professional, so you can do that. So I ended up giving this book a 5, and I will explain why.
Hey.
Yes, I had a lot. It takes a lot for Ashley to have emotion with books. I was emotionally attached to every single piece of this book. To the point where like I cry. I never cry. I never cried. The last time I cried was in Kingdom of Ash with the whole 13 thing. Like I'm dead serious. Like legitimately like bawled my eyes out because I was so like emotionally moved. So I'm ready to talk about this.
Okay.
With you.
All right.
So, okay. Our first stop is things we didn't like about this book. I didn't really have anything. So,
Okay, follow me. I only had a couple things. And this is where like my couple things are going along with the fact that I said it could have been more critical, and this is why. So I thought the middle dragged a little bit, particularly with the father, with Sal and his father. I felt like there was an opportunity to develop their relationship a little bit better, but we really didn't get that. And I was missing that. So that's the first problem I had. And the second one is that, and this is going to be difficult to really talk about because of spoilers, but I felt like the last 25% of this book could have been its own book. And because it was at the last quarter of the book, I felt like it didn't get the justice it deserved. And I'll just leave it at that.
that's probably good.
Yeah. So those are my only two dislikes. I did have a nitpick.
Well, that's okay. I was about to say, I'm like, okay, it's nitpicking time for Dawn. Solo Dono.
I only have one nitpick, and that is this book is so sad. Oh my God. I'm like, is anything good ever going to happen to these characters? It is so sad. And this is why it's not that I don't like realistic fiction, but I don't gravitate towards realistic fiction because, especially grief books, because they do tend to be really sad. And it's like, I don't want to read sad stories. So I did not realize this was this sad. But that's a nitpick. Yeah. It didn't affect my rating. It was just something I observed.
Yeah, for sure. Which was like, that was like my first thing that I liked is like, I don't like sad books. I will never pick them up. I did not think that this was going to be sad. I don't know what I hoped for it, but I was not upset with it because it was something abnormal to what you and I usually read. Like, how often do we read realistic fiction? Like, it's not something that you and I kind of sprinkle into that realm. And it was kind of a nice breath of fresh air because we just finished House of Sky and Breath. And I was like, I cannot get into another fantasy novel right now. My brain is still blown, like, with all of the information. And so this was a nice way to like kind of segue out of that. It was like a nice palate cleanser because it was something abnormal to what I would usually read.
Yeah. Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I had for dislikes and nitpicks.
Girl, I was into likes already. That was my first like.
What was your first like? I missed it.
It was the fact that I enjoyed a drama, if you will, a sad story, like not something that I would usually read. Like, way to get me to read something new.
Okay. My first like is that although I am Black, hi, I'm Dawn, I'm Black if it's the podcast, not all minorities know other minorities' struggles. Like, every minority has a different struggle. And I do not know really any South Asian people. So all these characters are Pakistani, and I don't know any South Asian people. So I don't really know too much about the culture or their struggles or what it's like being an immigrant or anything like that, or religion, nothing really. Mm-hmm. So when I read books with, diverse characters, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to learn something new. And I have read some books with some South Asian leads, and they all tend to kind of be similar in that it's usually about a first generation teen and their parent is really pressuring them to be a good student and to have a good career. There's just a lot of pressure. And so that's what I was kind of expecting going into this book, but that's not what we really got. We actually got some working middle class families who are experiencing, like you said, drug abuse and sexual abuse and physical abuse. And that's just not something you see in South Asian books with South Asian leads. And I was shocked, frankly. I was like, oh, this is something totally different. And also the, well, I can say it. So some of the characters, they are, how do I say it? They're not exactly, I don't want to say happy with they really want to assimilate to being an American, and they're kind of leaving their Pakistani culture behind. And that's also something new that I've not really seen too much in really any books with diverse teens. So yeah, I really like that she told a story from a different point of view. We read about a different family, a different voice. If you read a lot of South Asian books with South Asian teens in them, and you are kind of seeing a familiar theme, I think Sabaa did something different, which was refreshing.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. That was another one of my likes, was that I'm white, so I any information that I learn about other cultures to me is so enlightening, and I want to like take it all in, because I feel like you can get stuck inside of your norm and your culture, and if you don't open yourself to learning and educating yourself on other people's traditions and cultures and ways of life, you're going to lead a very sheltered life, and that is not going to make you a good human being, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
We all need to be well educated. And so this was something that, I was expecting, their jobs to be in certain institutions. And I was like, oh, this is kind of nice that their jobs are different than what I have seen personally.
Yeah.
And the fact that like we get to see that, like you said, the differences in wanting to embrace their Pakistani heritage and then wanting to run away as far as possible and go as far to say, like, we no longer practice those practices in this household, even though we are Pakistani, we are in America. So we are going to live by American, however you want to put it, way. So that was just like one of those things where I was like, I had no idea, and I was there for it. I was all for it, because every ounce of something that I can learn that is different from me, I'm soaking it all in. So I was there for it 100%. And it surprised me too. It really did surprise me the way that she told it, and the two different sides that we get. It's like, oh my goodness. Just, yeah, it's great. It's great. There's another one of your likes.
I'm not going to really go into it here. I will save for the spoiler edition, but I really like Nora's uncle. And when I say I like him, I liked his character, not him necessarily, but I liked his character, and that's all I'll say.
That is awesome. That was awesome. This book, in my opinion, I think is a great book for teens as well as adults, because there are so many different themes and topics of discussion that happen in a teen's life, or happen in anyone's life, and they don't get talked about. And this book does a really good job of giving you like what probably a lot of people are going through in some way or not, to be able to make it in life and whatever. And so this book for me it was a great discussion book. It was a great way to be like, here's some good information for you to kind of soak it in and make you feel like you're not alone. I could see that with a lot of like, if I was a librarian, I'd be like, here you go. This one's for you. This one's for you. Oh, you want? Oh, okay, here you go.
Yeah.
So, did you have any more?
Yeah. So going along with what you're talking about, because I wrote down a couple of quotes and moments in the book. And one of them is so in the story, and this is in the description, Sal and Noor they've been best friends since they were like 7. And they had a bit of a falling out. And so Sal starts dating this girl named Ashley.
I'm sorry.
And he says that he chose Ashley, let me see what I say, because she's broken. And I thought that was really interesting because his father is an alcoholic, and his father's also broken, and that's all he knows. Mm-hmm. And so he purposely chose to date this girl who was broken because that's all he knows. And when you were talking about this is a great book for teens, that is an example of why this is a great book for teens, because, you know, sometimes teens do things and they don't know why. And Sal is explaining why.
Yep. Yeah. There's a cause and an effect, which is what I like, because a lot of, you know, like a lot of teens, because like these, so Sal and Noor are 17 in this book. So like they are your typical, you know, senior high schooler trying to figure out life, have no idea what they're going to do with themselves. They both have like crazy family situations at home. You know, one has someone that's no longer with them. The other one is experiencing like, do I just stay with this person because they've clothed me and sheltered me? Like all of these really deep issues. And it's like, that is exactly what teens are going through, you know, just in society today. I mean, I think what Sabaa does really well is that she has in my opinion, she's like summed up the fact that like the masks that we wear as people are what protect us from what's really happening. So like we want to be perceived as one way, but in reality, what's happening behind closed doors is not something we want people to see. And she does a great job of breaking down that barrier and expressing that it is important for people to see what's behind the door or behind the mask. So yet again, like it's such a great discussion book because there's so many different ways that you can go with it. It's a very quotable book, as Dawn just showed you, very quotable. It's just, yeah, so good.
I have another quote. So let's see.
Let's hear it, because I left all my quotes on my iPad. It's in the other room. So, but you already got one that I wrote down, so it's okay. It's okay. Okay. We're good.
So this is towards the end of the book, and I'm not going to say what it's referring to, but at one point, one of the characters says, "What do you do when you want to help and they won't let you?" And I think this is a good moment for any age, because, you know, not just for teens necessarily. This is not something that they teach you in school. It's like if you have a friend who is on drugs, but they don't want you to help them, what do you do? That's not necessarily what's happening in this book. I just gave that as an example. But, you know, I thought that was a really good moment where he or she, one of the characters, is just like, this person isn't letting me help them. What do? I don't know what to do.
Yep. Like I said, it's such a good book because of that reason right there. There's so many key points that I'm like, this book touches on a lot of those things that like you should be taught in school, but you're not. Like I always call it like book smart versus street smart. This book gives you a lot of street smart on how you're going to keep standing on your own 2 feet, because your book is only going to do so much. And I'm dead serious. Like, oh yeah, there's so much that's happening that it's almost like taboo to talk about these topics, right? Because when I first read like the trigger warnings, I was like, was that like because we thought that we should tell our readers, Or is it, no, I'm telling you this because it is very important versus like I just put it in there because someone told me to, that there's a mention of something. So I love that. This book made me feel all of the emotions, which I think is like just number one. Like there's so much imagery that happens in the writing that is able to just encapsulate these huge topics and really get into the nitty gritty. Like we're not just like, so my friend's broken, what do I do? Like we don't just kind of just ask a question and then we move on past it or get some half-assed answer. It's like then this big whole thing of trial and error trying to figure out the best way to help someone with whatever they're going through. Yeah. So I love that. Yeah. Beautifully written. I was just amazed by the writing because it brought me back to Ember in the Ashes, where I was like, what is happening here? Like, this is beautifully written. I want to know what happens next.
I was actually shocked because, and I said this in our previous podcast, usually authors kind of stay in their own genre lane. They don't dabble in other genres. And to go from fantasy to this heavy story, I was like, oh Lord, what have I gotten myself into? But, when I first read Ember and Ashes, I was like, wow, this book is great. It's a little bit different than the fantasy that we've read before. The writing was great. The characters were great. And so I shouldn't have expected anything less from Sabaa. She knows how to write a story. And
we just got happy with the last series. It's fine. We had some issues. Maybe it was an us problem. Maybe it wasn't Saba's fault. Maybe it was just us.
It wasn't us. All right. I have another quote. And Sal's mom has passed away. That's not a spoiler. It's in the description. And he's talking about grief, basically. And he says that, let me see. Maybe people die of old age because they're full of holes. And he's saying that every time a person dies, it leaves a hole in you. And he's like, I have this hole in me. My mom's death has left a hole in me and I don't know how to fill it. And so when you reach a certain age, you witness so much loss that you have so many holes that maybe that's why people die of old age, because they're just full of holes. And so I thought that was a really good quote. And he says, maybe we could live forever if we didn't love so completely. And that's just another way of saying, it's, if we love someone so much, when they leave, it hurts. And so it's like, what do? Do you just not love people because you're afraid? Or do you love them completely? And then when they go, you have that love to hang on to.
Yeah, it's great because this book also touches on grief and the extent as to what grief can pull someone into. And it gives you a perfect parallel as to someone who's struggling with grief in the wrong way and someone who's struggling with grief and actually finds a way, if you will, which is just so important because there's so many times like in our society today that, if someone passes, you are supposed to pick up your bootstraps and keep going, and then there's some of us that like literally spiral down into such a deep depressive state that we don't know where the light is anymore in our life. So therefore our hole gets bigger because we can't get ourselves out of it. We don't know how to fill ourselves up with good things in our lives to continue to keep living. So yeah, it's a great quote. It's great. Anything that comes out of Sal's mouth, I'm just like, I'm here for it. Because he is an aspiring writer in the book too. Like he writes very eloquently and it's portrayed, and even as he talks, how he thinks, all of those things. So, do you have any other likes?
I just have one more. There is Noor is experiencing some microaggressions from a white classmate. And I'll just leave that at the microaggressions thing. But towards the end, it's full on racism. The microaggressions thing is just racism for this character. And Noor has another friend who says, we want to give reasons why people are racist, jealousy, bad parenting, but sometimes they're just horrible people. And I don't know, I thought that was kind of interesting because we always want to be like, is that person just must have had, you know, a bad upbringing. It comes from their parents or whatever. But she's like, sometimes people are just horrible people. It's just, there's no rationale to it. Why bother?
Yeah. But see, I like that though, you know, yet again, this is a beautifully written book for that reason. Like it's not just a standard cookie cutter answer that we get given, right? You know, it's more of, yes, there are terrible people in this world. And there are people that are products of their environment and how they've been raised. And it's like, but there are two different types. And I think we always try to rationalize like the fact that like maybe their upbringing just sucked. Like we try to give them a reason as to why they're bad or mean. And it's like they could very well just be mean people. Just mean, you know? I think I said all of my life. I do have a question for you though, because this is in line with the title. So the title of this book is called All My Rage, right? It's brought up in the book. But I wanted to ask, do you think that rage is taught or is it an experience that we acquire?
I think it might be an experience which teaches us rage. Because if we experience rage through another person, that would be an experience, but then we're inadvertently being taught.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask the question because like there's a moment in this book where one of our characters unleashes the rage that has been built up over the years, you know, and in my opinion, I think rage is brought on by experiences. Ultimately, because you can choose to unlearn something, you can choose to not like be that way, in my opinion, but yet your circumstances and experiences could lead you to the brink of exploding with rage to where you can't explain that.
Yeah. I know what character you're talking about, and I agree. Yeah. I do think that their experiences cause their rage. And we will talk about that in the spoiler edition if you listen. You've read it and you want to listen.
Yeah, so I don't have anything else to say because like I said, Dawn and I are trying to keep this very DL because any slip of something can really just unravel all of the things that we want to talk about with this. So if you apologies, I'm still traveling, guys. So if you do not want to spoil any of All My Rage, we are going to tell you to hop out now. And if you want to know which book to read for our next podcast, Dawn and I are going to be discussing Night Shift by Alex Finley, which is a mystery thriller. Yes?
Yeah.
So that is going to be our next book talk, if you will. And if you want to stay for the ride and hear all of what we have to say, we are going to spoil it. And hold on, Dawn does her,
Janet Jackson.
5. Yeah. How do you do the 3? 3, 2, 1.
One day we'll get it.
I was going like this the first time, and it's like it's supposed to be backwards. It's supposed to be this whole thing. Actually, it's not coordinated. This is why I can't play video games very well. It's